Episode 56. This is the Inside Deschutes County podcast. Wherever you might be and however you might be listening, thank you for making us a part of your day. You can subscribe on any podcast platform, and you can also find us at deschutes.org/podcast.
Deschutes County is an amazing place to live,
Ease of access,
work, and play.
Great place to raise a family.
I love the weather and the high desert.
At Deschutes County, we provide excellent service.
Beautiful.
We're here to help you.
Deschutes County is the heart of Oregon.
Everyone wants to be here.
Welcome to the Inside Deschutes County podcast. So glad you're with us. I'm Eric Bryant. Well, today we're talking about a process that could reshape how Deschutes County elects its leaders. Kind of important. The District Mapping Advisory Committee, we'll call it DMAC, kind of sounds like some sort of athletic center, an arena, might as well be. It's taking on the task of drawing potential district boundaries, and it's no small job. Joining me today is Neil Bryant. He's the committee's facilitator. He's going to walk us through how this all works, what goes into drawing these maps, if he's an artist or he's got his Sharpies, how this all happens, and how the public can get involved. Piece of cake, right?
No problem.
Thanks for joining us, Neil.
Nice to be here.
So nice to meet you. Super glad to have you here. This is a bit of a complicated process, at least it is for me. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe you've done this before. I don't know, but we're going to find out. Wanted to take some time to chat about it and lay out the process, get some questions answered. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. So let's start off with an easy softball question. What's your background? Who are you? Why are you here?
Well, my wife and I came to Bend in 1973. There were 13,000 people in Bend, 35,000 in the county, and I joined the law firm of Gray Fancher, Holmes & Hurley as a young associate. And that firm gradually evolved until the firm of Bryant, Loveland & Jarvis that still exists today, although I retired 7.5 years ago. And we've enjoyed Central Oregon. Probably if people have some familiarity with me other than being an attorney, I was a state senator from 1993 to 2001. I generally chaired the Judiciary Committee and served on other committees and was a member of the Emergency Board for the state for 8 of those years. I also chaired the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, which was in charge of coordinating higher education, the 7 universities, including the Bend campus, and community colleges, and then school districts, classes that are to facilitate credits by taking them now, and you don't have to take them in college, also certification for certain types of jobs, et cetera. So I've stayed active on the state level. In the community level, I was a founder and president of the Greater Bend Rotary Club in 1977. I've been chamber president. I was the first chair of the Deschutes County Children and Families Commission.
Wow, that's cool.
I formed the Deschutes County Children's Foundation, which owns the Rosie Bears campus and the other campuses in Central Oregon. I've served on numerous boards, including Partners in Care, which is hospice. I helped chair or co-chair numerous committees, like for the school district. I think I did 3 or 4 committees for building schools, and I did the city Go Bond in 2012 as a chair. So I've stayed active locally in those regards too. And my wife and I, we've raised 2 kids here, and both Bend High grads. And we still enjoy Central Oregon.
Deep roots.
Deep roots.
Deep roots.
Almost a native.
And he walked in here, folks, with a cast on his foot. Probably, I'm guessing, from kicking people into gear, right? Getting them in the...
I wish it was that good of a story. It was someone who's 77 years old, stood up quickly, his foot was asleep, didn't wait for the blood to go in your foot. I took a step, foot wasn't there, and I broke a bone in my right foot.
Well, hope you're okay there. Hope that recovers well. For those who haven't been along, I think having an attorney, former attorney, in this role of facilitator, pretty crucial. But can you, for people, how did we get here? How did why was this committee formed? Can you give us a little background there?
Yes, I think it became active as an idea again when the county voters decided to go from 3 to 5 commissioners. And at that point, the 3 commissioners decided it'd be better to be represented by districts rather than having all 5 elected at large. So how do you do that? The 3 commissioners could have done it themselves, but they thought it would be better to have an advisory committee made up of a demographic group that represents the county and make a recommendation to the county commissioners. Then the county commissioners will take a look at it and vote on it. And if they say, yep, this is what we want to do, then in May, the idea is it'd go on the ballot saying in the future for elections, not for the current elections, but in the future, these are the districts that the county's been divided into. And then you would probably review that again after the 2030 census, which would be 2031. And they could still be, hey, this makes sense. We can leave them the same or we can make some adjustments. But I think they'd be relatively small adjustments unless there's a huge change in the growing pattern and demographics of Deschutes County. So that's the process. And our time frame is we want to be complete in November so the county commission can review it and make a decision in December because they need some time in order to get it on the May ballot. I think it's mid-February they have to have it completed as far as ballot title and that sort of thing. So
this is quick.
This is
a quick turnaround.
It is, but there's a lot of information that's already there. It's just a matter of collating it and taking a look at it. And then we have 50 political precincts in Deschutes County. And then how you work with them to create these districts. You try not to divide a precinct, and you have, we know what the registered voters are on a daily basis in the county. It's public record, anyone can see that. The census was created for a different purpose. It wanted to find out who's in the United States, and they count everybody, and including children who can't vote. If you're 17 and under, you can't vote, including undocumented immigrants, they're counted. The homeless, the houseless, they're counted. And that information then is used when the state determines the congressional districts. And there's a cap on that in the House of Representatives. There's only 435. So you'll notice every 10 years there's a change in who gets new districts and loses districts. California lost 2 or 3 last time. New York lost 2. You're guaranteed 1 as a state. So Wyoming, Montana, they get 1, even though they have 2 senators. But that's the second purpose of the census then, is based upon who's there, how to divide up your districts.
So glad you're here because there's just so much information involved. I'm very curious. I have so many questions. First of all, the committee's formed.
Yes.
But haven't met yet, right?
Yes. Meet the first time on the 27th in an orientation here in Bend.
27th of August, and 7 members?
7 members.
Okay. And they were picked by the county commissioners?
Correct. Commissioner DeBone and Adair picked 2, and Commissioner Chang picked 3.
So can you give us a kind of a, peel back the curtain a little bit on what this work? I imagine a war room with maps on the wall. Everybody's got Sharpies, protractors, all of these, maybe string, almost like you're mapping out a crime scene, just like, okay, all of these things, pins in the maps, and can you give us a look at what kind of what this process will be like?
What you just described in the old days would be what would happen. But today, with GSI and other data information, you pull it up on a screen. I mean, you have a general map of Deschutes County.
I'm sure it's all
and you
computerized.
You can immediately see, add the 50 districts. You can see how many people are in those districts that are registered to vote. As I said, you had the census information, although it's not definitely tied to precincts, but there's a way to do that. Deschutes County has a very good IT GIS system and people who know how to operate it. So once we get into the meat of this, we can begin to map areas and say, okay, if we divide it here, what does it look like, how many people, et cetera, and you do it on the screen. It's not instantaneous, but it's close. And then you say, okay, let's move this precinct over here. You can do that, and it only takes a few minutes to accomplish that. So that's what this.
I must
war
be
room,
old school. Thinking
you are. I could not do this, but that's what we're going to do in this war room, and it's important. We are saying this is nonpartisan, and I'm going to try and make sure that happens. We're not going to do any alignment that's designed to help a political party. And by the way, probably the non-affiliated independent parties, the smaller parties, have a greater majority of registered voters than the Republicans and the Democrats. But they're an unorganized group. The Democrats and the Republicans have more of an organization. They have central committees. But one of our guidelines is that's not relevant to what we're trying to do. And so hopefully that's the way this will turn out.
I want to talk to you about public involvement and transparency, but first, so many moving parts to this in terms of the data, the census data, the voter registration numbers, the maps, all the guidelines, the rules. How do you take all of that information and turn it into something that the committee can work with? How do you facilitate that?
Well, the orientation will help with some of it. We'll go over our guidelines, and there's 3 pages involved there, and answer questions, and I think those will be pretty clear. We're going to act as a public body, which will mean we'll welcome public involvement. We'll have 15 minutes at the beginning of each meeting after the orientation for the public to have their say. We have a website. The individual people appointed and myself have now DeschutesCounty.org website, so people can communicate with us, ask questions, those sorts of things. And so that part, I think, will be fairly easy. And in general, the public who gets involved with city commissions, county commissions, understand that part of it. The challenge is with all this information, how do you begin drawing maps? And so that'll be something to facilitate. And what weight do you give to certain things? Like the census, again, created for a different purpose. It was done in 2020. The census date is April 1, 2020, so it's 5 years old. And although Portland State University does some updating on that, it's not a census. And so it's the information is not granular enough to say, okay, how many voters do you have in this household, those sorts of things, as you try to update it. Whereas, as I mentioned, registered voters is updated almost daily. So we know who is registered to vote. But there are some people that never want to be registered to vote. The old reason people didn't want to be registered to vote was they didn't want to serve on jury duty. And it turns out, well, that doesn't matter anymore because they use not only voter registration, but do you have a driver's license?
License, right.
So that you're not going to escape that way. But it used to be, 12, 15% of people just didn't want to register to vote. But the rest of that on voter registration is very accurate. And but you're not including people who can't vote that are 17 and younger or that they're not citizens of the United States in that information.
Yeah, I'm sure making sure that the information's current, really important, accurate, really important. And then these rules. Can you talk about the rules that you have to follow? Because I know that there are several.
Well, there are many, and it deals with Oregon public meeting laws, transparency, minutes, recordings, those types of things, so people can go on their computer if they're not in the room and watch what's going on. If they want to testify, there's a way to do that in that 15-minute period. If 5 people want to have something to say that have signed up, then they get 3 minutes each. If it's 20 people, then you shrink the time because the committee has to do its work. But you can submit information, comments online, so that's there. We're subject to the Oregon meetings laws. We're subject to the Oregon ethics laws, which are really important. That the idea there is when you're making decisions, it's in the public, not private conversations that go on, not in the meeting. And so in the orientation, we'll spend quite a bit of time on that. Other things with the ethics, conflicts of interest. I talked to all the commissioners, and I've been assured that none of them plan to run for the county commission, nor do their relatives, their family, because that would be a conflict of interest. So we're starting in a good position there. But they just have to be careful in their conversations they have outside of the open meeting. And because that's where they can, if 4 of them have the same conversation, it looks like that's a quorum, and they're trying to make a decision without being in the public meeting. So, but that can be avoided and should be, and we'll facilitate that.
What about the districts themselves? Are there rules like how balanced they have to be, or do they have to be within a certain number of each other, that kind of thing?
Well, we in the rules we've adopted, we'd like to be within 5%.
5%.
But that's arbitrary. We could be higher than that and still be legitimate. But in fact, I think the Secretary of State says you can be within 10%. But people always look at that, and so we're conscious of that, and we'll try and get within 5%.
Neil, from your experience, what do you think is, you talked a little bit about, open meetings and the public involvement there on that side of things, but what's the most important thing the county can do, this committee, the DMAC can do to keep people's trust throughout this process? Because trust is kind of a tricky thing these days, and hearing information and processing that information, sometimes it's a little tough to dissect for some folks. And so what is the plan there as you facilitate these meetings to work through those challenges, which are almost outside the scope of doing the work itself?
Correct. And right now, people are aware of what's called gerrymandering, which is a political process to take advantage of a particular party. Both the Republicans and the Democrats at the state level do that, sometimes at the city level. In fact, I think it was the city of Boston that first used the term gerrymandering because the mayor's last name was Jerry. But we're not going to be involved in that. In our rules, we're not. Some people might look at a map and say, well, that favors the city of Bend too much, or the city of Redmond, or the rural community is not adequately represented. So we're aware of those concerns, but with the guidelines and with the information we have, we should be able to do it in a way that most people will feel very comfortable with. And if for some reason the mapping committee fails, or the commissioners don't approve it, or the voters in next May don't approve it, then it's all open. The commissioners still get elected, but there's no districts, so you campaign in the entire county, and the entire county determines each seat who gets elected.
Are there safeguards in place to make sure that these are fair? Or you talked about the 5% and the rules, but are there other things that you've talked about as you start to begin this process to make sure?
There's some guidelines from the Secretary of State's office that offer some help. And of course, you can't discriminate based upon discriminate against protected individuals, but or create a way that takes away the effective right to vote for a group that's protected. I don't think
it's basically follow the rules, right?
Yeah, and be fair.
Yeah.
Here's the data. Develop something that's fair, and it's not going to be perfect. That's because it can't be with the information you have, but it's going to be fair.
and here's what we're doing.
Right.
Here's what we've done.
So you'd have 5 commissioners, and they're running in 5 different districts would be the idea.
I think talking to a former attorney, this question goes right up your alley. If the committee hits a tough disagreement, how do you help everyone kind of find some common ground there to work through that? Because I'm sure people have opinions, and as facilitator, I would imagine that's going to be one of the hardest jobs of this, is to navigate the traffic cones, if you will, the weaving in and out of issues that might pop up. What are your thoughts on that as you prepare to head into these meetings?
Well, if I'm unsuccessful in getting consensus about what needs to be done, then that's a problem, because if this came out of the committee on a 4-3 vote, the Deschutes County voters will see that and have more suspicions than if it was unanimous or 6-1. So I will do my darndest to make sure that that won't happen, but it could. The open-mindedness of the 7 who are appointed, I hope, is that you're going to do something here for the entire county, not for your particular residency. The fact that you live in Bend, okay, that's a factor, but you got to also think about Lapine and Redmond and Sisters, et cetera. And likewise, those other cities will do the same. And then the unincorporated portion of this. I mean, there's a lot of people in the unincorporated portion of Bend, Sun River, Black Butte Ranch, Eagle Grass, and then just people that are living on 5 or 10 acres, et cetera. And so how do you take care of their interest? So my conversations will be with people who are set in their ways on a certain thing. Say, well, I hear you what you're saying, but how do you answer these questions? And try and bring people into a consensus.
It's kind of like getting to yes, right?
Getting to yes.
Getting to a yes.
Yeah.
That's what I've always been taught in terms of mediation and things like, can we agree on this? And just getting to that yes. This is a tight timeline, Neil. Mm-hmm. What are some of the big milestones that you're focused on hitting between now and getting this on the ballot?
Well, beginning in September, we meet every week for 2 hours, and we meet not only in Bend, but we're going to go to Redmond and Sisters and Lapine. And so you might get a different local input when you have the public comments there in those different areas. But every week, and I think when people see the data that's available and what you can use and what's the most reliable data, and then you can play with these maps instantly. My hope is lights will go on and say, okay, let's do this. And that the concerns, the disagreements are really over, one precinct being in this area or another area. Those types. Because one of the things you look at, you want these districts to be contiguous. What's the community of interest in them? And to me, that goes back to fairness. And then just the general demographics and who's registered to vote, how many people, and those sorts of things. It should point us in a direction. And as I said, it won't be perfect, but it'll be fair. And then again, the county should review it after the 2030 census.
As you put your head to pillow every night, and those thoughts start to come in, are you thinking this is a really hard job, or like this is just something we need to do, part of the process? Put it on a scale of 1 to 10 for me, 10 being the hardest. Like, how difficult is this going to be to get the maps drawn?
The mechanical part of it, the maps being drawn, the data, all the data is public record. That part will be easy. That'll be a 1 or a 2 or a 3. The more challenging part will be the demographics and how many people should be in a certain area versus another area, and where those lines should be drawn. But again, we have 50 precincts, and we don't want to break those up. We can, but it's difficult and expensive when you do. And then you have a neighbor that's got voting for one commissioner, and their other neighbor is saying he didn't get to vote for that person because it's across the street. So that's something you want to avoid where you can too. But that'll be the more challenging part. And this will come back to the advisory committee. If they still have this open mind rather than thinking they're representing a certain segment of the population, then I think we can get to yes.
Have you looked? I know you're the facilitator of this committee, not on the committee, but have you looked at kind of the initial maps and districts and gone, that's going to be a sticking point, that area, that part of Bend, that part of Redmond, or that rural community, that's the one I need to be aware of as the conversations start to happen? What's going to be tricky?
I've looked at the precincts and the general information there, and I haven't gone into any detail of saying, okay, this precinct here that borders Bend and the unincorporated area, that could be a challenge. I haven't gone into that depth yet, and I haven't wanted to, because that's something I want to hear from the committee first before Neil Bryant thinks this should be what we do.
Are you going to put people in timeout? What's the? I'm wondering your style here is kind of what I'm digging at. I mean, I don't want to demean the process here, but and obviously very professional people as a part of this committee, they know what they're doing too. But what's going to be your thing as you facilitate this process?
Well, publicly, I hope there's never a need for a timeout. I
kid, but you get what I'm saying,
right? But if I see something that I'm concerned about in private after the meeting, I'll call that person and say, here's a concern I have, and is there a better way to express what you're feeling than doing this or making it personal, that sort of stuff. I hope I never have to do that, but if I had to, I would.
Yeah. All right, so end of August is kind of the launching off point for
the orientation.
And then the actual mapping process begins
in September.
September
4th, I believe.
What did I miss? Did we talk about it all? Did we solve this?
We haven't solved it. We've raised the questions and the issues. We know the timelines and what the goal is.
Yeah. Lots of good information. Neil Bryant, the facilitator of the DMAC, the District Mapping Advisory Committee. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, how you think this process will go, how the public can be involved, how it's going to be transparent and fair. Thank you so much for sharing all this information.
You're welcome.
My thanks again to Neil Bryant for helping us understand what's happening behind the scenes in the district mapping process. We'll keep following the committee's work as they move toward presenting a final draft to the county commissioners. If you'd like to learn more or follow along with meeting updates, you can find details at Deschutes.org or follow us on the county's social media pages. A friendly reminder, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or stream episodes anytime at Deschutes.org/podcast. We hope you'll click those subscribe and download buttons. But until next time, please be safe out there.